Personal responsibility is a concept some people just can't grasp. Instead of admitting fault, they blame everyone around them for their own stupid decisions. Here are 45 times people blamed others for things, so obviously their own fault that everyone was amazed by their lack of self-awareness. 1. Someone blamed McDonald's for making them obese after eating there 3 times a day for 10 years. They weighed 400 pounds. They ate McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner daily for a decade. They never exercised. They never tried eating healthier. One day, they decided to sue McDonald's. They claimed McDonald's made them obese. They said McDonald's addicted them to their food. They hired a lawyer. The lawyer took the case. They went to court. The judge asked about their eating habits. They admitted eating there 3 times daily. The judge asked if anyone forced them. They said no, but McDonald's made it too convenient. The judge asked if they knew fast food was unhealthy. They said yes, but McDonald's should have stopped them. The judge asked if they ever tried eating elsewhere. They said McDonald's was their favorite. The judge dismissed the case. They were angry. They appealed. The appeal was rejected. They had to pay McDonald's legal fees. The fees were $15,000. Fees. They told media outlets McDonald's ruined their life. Media outlets mocked them. Comments were brutal. People called them out for refusing responsibility. They insisted it wasn't their fault. They started a blog about McDonald's being evil. Nobody read it. Their health continued deteriorating. Doctors said they needed to change their diet. They refused. They said doctors were part of the problem. They continued eating McDonald's. They developed diabetes. They blamed McDonald's for the diabetes. They tried suing again. No lawyer would take the case. They represented themselves. The case was dismissed immediately. They had to pay more legal fees. They filed for bankruptcy. They lost their house. They moved into a small apartment. They still ate McDonald's daily. Friends stopped associating with them. Family gave up trying to help. They died at age 52 from heart disease. Their obituary blamed McDonald's. The stupidity was eating McDonald's 3 times daily for 10 years, suing them for your obesity, paying $15,000 in legal fees, refusing to change, and dying while still blaming others. 2. A person blamed their GPS for driving into a lake. They were driving at night. Their GPS said to turn right. They turned right without looking. They drove straight into a lake. Their car started sinking. They escaped through the window. They called 911. Emergency services arrived. They pulled their car out. The car was totaled. They tried to file an insurance claim. Insurance asked what happened. They said their GPS told them to drive into the lake. Insurance said they should have been watching the road. They insisted the GPS is at fault. Insurance denied the claim. They sued the GPS company. The lawsuit claimed defective navigation. The GPS company investigated. The GPS route showed a legitimate turn. They'd turned too early at the wrong spot. The GPS company provided evidence. The judge dismissed the case. They had to pay the GPS company's legal fees. The fees were $20,000. They still had no car. They had to buy a new car. They couldn't afford it. They bought a cheap used car. They told everyone the GPS company ruined their life. Friends said they should have watched the road. They insisted the GPS is supposed to be foolproof. Friends stopped listening. They posted on social media. Comments mocked them. People shared dashcam footage showing the lake was clearly visible. They claimed it was dark, and the GPS didn't warn them. People pointed out cars have headlights. They blocked everyone. They still use GPS, but constantly complain about it. They've never accepted it was their fault. The stupidity was blindly following GPS into a lake, suing the GPS company, paying $20,000, and never accepting responsibility. 3. Someone blamed their dog for eating their homework in college. They were a 20-year-old college student. They had a paper due. They didn't write the paper. The due date arrived. They told their professor their dog ate their homework. The professor stared at them. They insisted it was true. The professor asked if they were serious. They said their dog destroyed it. The professor said this is college, not elementary school. They insisted accidents happen. The professor asked for proof. They said they threw away the remains. The professor asked why they didn't rewrite it. They said they didn't have time. The professor asked when the dog ate it. They said last night. The professor said the assignment was given 3 weeks ago. They said they finished it yesterday. The professor didn't believe them. They showed a photo of their dog. The professor said that doesn't prove anything. They insisted they deserved an extension. The professor said no, they got a 0 on the assignment. They complained to the dean that the dean asked for their story. They explained about the dog. The dean asked if they had a digital copy. They said they wrote it by hand. The dean asked why in 2023 they were writing papers by hand. They said they prefer handwriting. The dean said that's their problem. The complaint was dismissed. They failed the class. They had to retake it. They told other students about the unfair professor. Students said the dog ate my homework. Excuse is pathetic. They insisted it really happened. Nobody believed them. The stupidity was using "my dog ate my homework" in college, not having a backup, expecting anyone to believe it, and failing a class because of it. 4. A person blamed their phone's autocorrect for sending offensive text to their boss. They were texting their boss. They typed something inappropriate. Autocorrect didn't change it. They sent it. Their boss received the offensive message. Their boss called them immediately. Their boss asked what the text meant. They said autocorrect changed it. Their boss read the text back to them. The text was clearly intentional. They insisted autocorrect made it offensive. Their boss said autocorrect doesn't work that way. They said it must have. Their boss asked them to explain what they meant to type. They couldn't explain. Their boss said the text was clearly deliberate. They insisted their phone betrayed them. Their boss said they're responsible for texts they send. They argued smartphones are unreliable. Their boss asked if they reviewed the text before sending. They said they trusted autocorrect. Their boss said that doesn't make sense. They asked for forgiveness. Their boss said the text was too offensive. They were fired. They tried to sue Apple for faulty autocorrect. The lawsuit went nowhere. They filed for unemployment. Unemployment asked why they were fired. They explained the autocorrect situation. Unemployment denied the claim. They said it was willful misconduct. They couldn't pay their bills. They had to move home. They told their parents autocorrect ruined their life. Their parents said they should take responsibility. They refused. They still blame autocorrect. The stupidity was blaming autocorrect for an offensive text you wrote, getting fired, trying to sue Apple, and refusing to take responsibility. 5. Someone blamed their barista for making them late to work every day. They stopped at Starbucks every morning. They arrived 5 minutes before work started. The line was always long. They waited 10-15 minutes. They were late to work daily. Their boss warned them about tardiness. They blamed the Starbucks barista for being slow. Their boss said they should leave earlier. They said they shouldn't have to. Their boss said that's part of being an adult. They insisted Starbucks should be faster. Their boss said they're choosing to stop there. They said they need coffee to function. Their boss said make coffee at home. They said their coffee isn't as good. Their boss gave them a final warning. They continued the same routine. They were late again. Their boss fired them. They wrote a negative review about the Starbucks. They blamed the barista by name. They said the barista cost them their job. The review went viral. People mocked them. Comments said they should have left earlier. They argued Starbucks should anticipate their schedule. People said that's insane. The barista responded. The barista said they serve 200 people each morning. The barista said this person always came during rush hour. The barista suggested coming earlier or ordering ahead. They said that's not the point. People sided with the barista. They were humiliated online. They filed for unemployment. Unemployment asked why they were fired. They explained about being late due to Starbucks. Unemployment denied the claim. They blamed the barista for that too. The stupidity was blaming a barista for your chronic lateness, getting fired, writing a terrible review, being mocked online, and never realizing you could leave earlier. 6. A person blamed their tattoo artist for their misspelled tattoo that they designed. They wanted a tattoo. They designed it themselves. They wrote "no regrets" instead of "no regrets." They showed the design to the tattoo artist. The artist asked if they were sure about the spelling. They said yes. The artist suggested double-checking. They insisted it was correct. The artist said it looks like a misspelling. They said it's intentional. The artist asked them to confirm 3 times. They confirmed each time. The artist did the tattoo exactly as designed. A week later, they realized the mistake. They went back to the artist furious. They demanded the artist fix it for free. The artist showed them the signed consent form. The form had the spelling. They signed it. The artist showed them texts where they confirmed the spelling. They said the artist should have known. The artist said they asked multiple times. They said the artist is the professional. The artist said they did exactly what was requested. They demanded a refund. The artist refused. They left a 1-star review. They said the artist ruined their body. The review included photos, Comments mocked the spelling. People defended the artist. Screenshots of the artist asking for confirmation circulated. They looked worse. They tried to sue. No lawyer would take the case. They had to pay $2,000 to get it covered up. They still blamed the artist. The stupidity was designing a misspelled tattoo, confirming it multiple times, blaming the artist afterward, and refusing to accept you wrote "Regerts." 7. Someone blamed their neighbor for their lawn dying because the neighbor's lawn was too healthy. They had a lawn that was dying. They never watered it. They never fertilized it. They never did yard work. Their neighbor had a beautiful lawn. Their neighbor worked on it daily. They became jealous. They complained to their HOA. They claimed their neighbor's healthy lawn was harming theirs. The HOA asked how. They said the neighbor's grass was stealing nutrients. The HOA said that's not how grass works. They insisted their lawn's failure was the neighbor's fault. The HOA investigated. The HOA found they never maintained their lawn. The HOA said the problem is neglect. They argued the neighbor should share their lawn care. The HOA said that's ridiculous. They demanded the HOA force the neighbor to help them. The HOA refused. They sued the neighbor. The lawsuit claimed the neighbor created an unfair growing environment. The judge read the complaint. The judge asked if this was a joke. They insisted it was serious. The judge asked about their lawn care routine. They admitted doing nothing. The judge dismissed the case immediately. They had to pay the neighbor's legal fees. The fees were $3,000. Their lawn got worse. Weeds took over. The HOA fined them for lawn violations. They blamed the neighbor for that too. They refused to pay HOA fines. The HOA placed a lien on their house. They couldn't sell without paying. They were stuck. The stupidity was blaming your neighbor's healthy lawn for your dead lawn, suing them, paying $3,000, getting HOA fines, and having a lien placed on your house. 8. A person blamed their gym for not making them fit after paying for a membership they never used. They bought a gym membership. They paid $50 monthly for 2 years. They never went to the gym. They gained 50 pounds. They blamed the gym. They said the gym didn't motivate them. They demanded a refund. The gym said they never attended. They said that's the gym's fault. The gym asked how. They said the gym should have called to encourage them. The gym said members are responsible for attendance. They said they paid so the gym should make them fit. The gym said they have to actually show up. They left negative reviews. They said the gym takes money and provides no results. Reviews included their attendance record. The record showed 0 visits in 2 years. Comments mocked them. People said you have to actually go to the gym. They argued they paid so results should happen automatically. People said that's not how exercise works. They tried to sue for false advertising. The lawsuit claimed the gym promised results. The gym showed their contract. The contract said results require participation. The judge dismissed the case. They had to pay the gym's legal fees. The fees were $5,000. They canceled their membership. They joined a different gym. They never went there either. They blamed that gym too. The stupidity was paying for a gym membership for 2 years without going once, blaming the gym for not being fit, suing them, and paying $5,000 in legal fees. 9. Someone blamed their mechanic for their car breaking down after ignoring all maintenance for 5 years. They owned a car. They never changed the oil. They never did any maintenance. They drove it for 5 years. The car broke down. They took it to a mechanic. The mechanic said the engine was destroyed from lack of oil. They blamed the mechanic. They said the mechanic should have reminded them. The mechanic said they'd never been there before. They said mechanics should track all cars. The mechanic said that's impossible. They said the mechanic should have found them somehow. The mechanic showed them the destroyed engine. The mechanic said this is from neglect. They insisted the car should last forever. The mechanic said cars need maintenance. They demanded the mechanic fix it for free. The mechanic said repairs would cost $8,000. They refused to pay. They sued the mechanic. The lawsuit claimed professional negligence. The mechanic showed maintenance records. There were none. The mechanic explained basic car care. The judge asked if they ever changed the oil. They said they didn't know they had to. The judge asked if they read the owner's manual. They said no. The judge dismissed the case. They had to pay the mechanic's legal fees. The fees were $4,000. Their car was still broken. They had to scrap it. They bought a new car. They treated it the same way. That car also broke down. They blame that mechanic too. The stupidity was never maintaining your car for 5 years, blaming the mechanic, suing them, paying $4,000, and repeating the same behavior. 10. A person blamed their professor for failing them when they never attended class. They enrolled in a college course, they never attended lectures, they never did assignments, they never took exams. The semester ended, they received an F. They were shocked, they emailed the professor. They said there must be a mistake. The professor checked records. The professor said they never attended. They said they were enrolled. The professor said enrollment requires participation. They blamed the professor for not reaching out. The professor said it's not their job to chase students. They said the professor should have contacted them. The professor said they're adults responsible for attendance. They complained to the dean. They said the professor failed them unfairly. The dean checked attendance. The dean confirmed 0 attendance. The dean said the grade stands. They appealed. They claimed the professor was biased against them. The appeal committee asked for evidence. They had none. The appeal was denied. They failed the class. They had to retake it. They blamed the professor for wasting their time and money. They left negative reviews. They said the professor doesn't care about students. Other students defended the professor. Students said you have to actually attend class. They argued online classes exist, so attendance shouldn't matter. People said it wasn't an online class. They refused to accept responsibility. The stupidity was never attending class, expecting to pass, blaming the professor, and arguing attendance shouldn't be required. 11. Someone blamed the restaurant for their food poisoning after eating leftovers they left in their car for 3 days. They ordered takeout. They left it in their car. They forgot about it for 3 days. It was summer. The temperature was 95 degrees. They found the food and ate it. They got food poisoning. They blamed the restaurant. They called to complain. They said the restaurant gave them food poisoning. The manager asked when they ate it. They said today. The manager asked when they ordered it. They said 3 days ago. The manager asked where they stored it. They admitted it was in their hot car. The manager said that's why they got sick. They insisted the food must have been bad originally. The manager said food can't survive 3 days in a hot car. They demanded a refund. The manager refused. They left terrible reviews. They said the restaurant serves contaminated food. Reviews mentioned the 3-day timeline. Comments mocked them. People said leaving food in a hot car for 3 days causes food poisoning. They argued the food should last longer. People explained basic food safety. They insisted the restaurant was at fault. They tried to sue. No lawyer would take the case. They filed complaints with the health department. The health department investigated the restaurant. The restaurant passed inspection. The health department told them the issue was improper storage. They insisted everyone was wrong. They warned people about the restaurant. Nobody listened. The stupidity was eating 3-day-old food left in a hot car, getting food poisoning, blaming the restaurant, and refusing to accept basic food safety. 12. A person blamed the movie theater for their weight gain because the popcorn was too good. They went to movies weekly. They bought large popcorn with extra butter each time. They did this for 2 years. They gained 40 pounds. They blamed the movie theater. They said the popcorn was too tempting. They demanded the theater take responsibility. The theater said they'd choose to buy it. They said the theater should offer healthier options. The theater said they have fruit and water. They said those aren't as good. The theater said that's their choice. They wrote complaints to corporate. They said theaters create unhealthy environments. Corporate responded that all purchases are voluntary. They tried to organize a boycott. Nobody joined. They posted on social media. They said theaters are making America obese. Comments said nobody forced them to buy popcorn. They argued theaters market it too effectively. People said marketing doesn't remove personal responsibility. They threatened to sue. They said theaters should warn about calorie content. Theaters started posting calorie information. They still bought large popcorn. They blamed the theater for their continued weight gain. Doctors told them to stop buying popcorn. They refused. They said it's part of the movie experience. They gained more weight. They developed health problems. They blamed the theater for their diabetes. The stupidity was buying large popcorn weekly for 2 years, gaining 40 pounds, blaming the theater, and continuing the same behavior. 13. Someone blamed their hairdresser for their bad haircut when they refused to follow the hairdresser's advice. They went to a hairdresser. The hairdresser suggested a style that would work with their hair type. They refused. They insisted on a completely different style. The hairdresser said it wouldn't work with their hair texture. They demanded it anyway. The hairdresser explained the issues. They said they know what they want. The hairdresser did the requested cut. It looked terrible. They were furious. They blamed the hairdresser. They demanded a refund. The hairdresser reminded them of the warnings. They said the hairdresser should have refused. The hairdresser said they insisted multiple times. They said the hairdresser is the professional. The hairdresser said professionals were ignored. They left a 1-star review. They said the hairdresser ruined their hair. The review mentioned they demanded a specific style. Comments sided with the hairdresser. People said you can't ignore advice, then complain. They argued the hairdresser should have been more forceful. People said that's not how it works. They went to another hairdresser. They demanded the same bad style. That hairdresser also warned them. They ignored it again. The result was terrible again. They blame that hairdresser too. They've been through 5 hairdressers. They blame all of them. The stupidity was ignoring professional advice, getting the exact cut you demanded, blaming the hairdresser for following your instructions, and repeating this pattern 5 times. 14. A person blamed their alarm clock for making them late when they kept hitting snooze for 2 hours. They set an alarm for 6 a.m. The alarm went off at 6 a.m. They hit snooze. They hit snooze every 9 minutes for 2 hours. They finally woke up at 8 a.m. They were supposed to be at work at 8 a.m. They were 2 hours late. Their boss asked what happened. They blamed their alarm clock. They said it didn't go off. Their boss asked if they heard it. They admitted they heard it. Their boss asked why they didn't get up. They said the alarm should be louder. Their boss said they clearly heard it. They said they expected it to keep trying. Their boss said hitting snooze is their choice. They insisted the alarm failed them. Their boss said they failed themselves. They were written up. They complained the write-up was unfair. HR asked for their explanation. They said their alarm clock doesn't work properly. HR asked if they hit snooze. They admitted it. HR said that's not the alarm's fault. The write-up stood. They bought a new alarm clock. They did the same thing with it. They were late again. They blamed the new alarm clock. Their boss fired them. They filed for unemployment. They said they were fired due to defective alarm clocks. Unemployment denied the claim. They blamed the alarm clock manufacturer. They left negative reviews. Reviews said, alarm clock didn't prevent me from hitting snooze. Comments mocked them. The stupidity was hitting snooze for 2 hours, blaming the alarm clock, getting fired, and never accepting you chose to keep sleeping. 15. Someone blamed the weatherman for their ruined vacation because it rained. They planned a beach vacation. They checked the forecast. The forecast showed rain all week. They booked the trip anyway. It rained the entire week. They were angry. They blamed the weatherman. They said the weatherman ruined their vacation. Friends said the weatherman doesn't control weather. They insisted the weatherman should have been clearer. Friends said the forecast showed rain. They said forecasts are often wrong. Friends said this one was right. They said the weatherman discouraged them from canceling. Friends asked how. They said by predicting rain. Friends said that's literally the weatherman's job. They wrote angry emails to the weather station. They said the weatherman owes them a refund. The station said they don't control weather. They demanded an apology. The station refused. They posted on social media. They said weather forecasters ruin vacations. Comments explained forecasts are predictions, not decisions. They argued forecasters shouldn't predict bad weather. People said that's insane. They said positive thinking could have changed the weather. People said that's not how weather works. They threatened to sue. They said the forecast caused emotional distress. No lawyer would take the case. They went on another vacation. They didn't check the forecast. It rained again. They blamed the weatherman for not warning them. The stupidity was booking a vacation despite rain forecasts, blaming the weatherman for accurate predictions, wanting to sue, and expecting positive thinking to control weather. 16. A person blamed their ex for their dating problems 5 years after the breakup. They broke up with someone 5 years ago. They hadn't dated successfully since. They blamed their ex. They said their ex ruined their ability to trust. Friends said 5 years is enough time to move on. They insisted the damage was permanent. Friends suggested therapy. They said therapy couldn't fix what their ex did. Friends asked what the ex did. They said the ex broke up with them. Friends said breakups happen. They said this one was particularly traumatic. Friends asked for details. They admitted the breakup was mutual and amicable. Friends were confused. They said the ex still ruined them somehow. Friends said they're choosing not to move on. They insisted it's the ex's fault. They contacted the ex. They blamed the ex for their current problems. The ex said they broke up 5 years ago. They demanded the ex take responsibility. The ex blocked them. They posted about the ex online. They said the ex destroyed their life. Mutual friends saw it. Mutual friends defended the ex. Friends said the breakup was fine. They argued friends don't understand. They lost those friends. They remained single. They blamed the ex every time a date failed. Dates found out about the obsession. Dates ran away. They blamed the ex for that too. The stupidity was blaming an ex for dating problems 5 years later, admitting the breakup was amicable, contacting them about it, and driving away new dates with your obsession. 17. Someone blamed their cat for their failed relationship. They were in a relationship. Their partner was allergic to cats. They knew this before getting a cat. They got a cat anyway. Their partner asked them to rehome it. They refused. Their partner said it was the cat or them. They chose the cat. Their partner left. They blamed the cat for the breakup. They told friends the cat ruined their relationship. Friends said they chose the cat. They insisted the cat manipulated them. Friends said cats can't manipulate. They said the cat gave them looks. Friends said they're anthropomorphizing. They insisted the cat is responsible. Friends said they made a choice. They refused to accept it. They tried to get back with their ex. Their ex said no. They said they'd get rid of the cat. Their ex said it's too late. They blamed the cat for their ex not taking them back. They kept the cat but resented it. They treated the cat poorly. Friends noticed. Friends reported them to animal control. Animal control investigated. They said the cat ruined their life. Animal control took the cat away. They were devastated. They blamed the cat for being taken. They tried to get the cat back. Animal control refused. The cat was adopted by someone else. They still blamed the cat. The stupidity was choosing a cat over your partner, blaming the cat for your choice, mistreating it, losing it, and still blaming the cat. 18. A person blamed their shoes for not getting promoted. They worked at a corporate office. They wore casual shoes. The dress code required professional shoes. They ignored it. Promotion opportunities came up. They were passed over. They blamed their shoes. They said their shoes prevented promotion. Their boss said it was performance-based. They insisted shoes were a factor. Their boss said dress code violations didn't help. They said shoes shouldn't matter. Their boss said following rules matters. They demanded promotion anyway. Their boss refused. They complained to HR. They said shoes are discriminatory. HR said dress codes are standard. They argued comfortable shoes improve performance. HR said the dress code is clear. They refused to change shoes. They were passed over again. They blamed the shoes again. They sued for discrimination. The lawsuit claimed shoe-based bias. The company showed the dress code. The company showed other employees followed it. The judge dismissed the case. They had to pay legal fees. The fees were $7,000. They still didn't change shoes. They were passed over a third time. They blamed the shoes and the company. They quit. They blamed the shoes for making them quit. They got a new job. That job had a dress code too. They wore the same casual shoes. They were fired during probation. They blamed the shoes again. The stupidity was violating dress code repeatedly, blaming your shoes for not getting promoted, suing over shoes, paying $7,000, and never just buying professional shoes. 19. Someone blamed the government for their unemployment when they'd been fired for cause from 3 jobs. They were fired from their first job for stealing. They were fired from their second job for not showing up. They were fired from their third job for harassing coworkers. They were unemployed. They blamed the government. They said the government doesn't create jobs. Friends said they were fired for legitimate reasons. They insisted the government failed them. Friends said they caused their own firings. They said the government should protect workers. Friends said workers have to actually work. They applied for unemployment. They were denied due to misconduct. They blamed the government for denial. They appealed. The appeal board reviewed their terminations. The board found clear misconduct in all cases. The appeal was denied. They blamed the government for the denial. They posted online about government failure. They said the system is rigged. People asked why they were fired. They admitted stealing, skipping work, and harassment. People said that's their fault. They argued the government should rehabilitate them. People said they need to rehabilitate themselves. They refused to accept responsibility. They remained unemployed. They blamed the government for not providing jobs. They never applied for jobs. They said applications are pointless. People said they're not trying. They blamed the government for that too. The stupidity was getting fired 3 times for cause, blaming the government, refusing to accept responsibility, not applying for jobs, and expecting the government to employ you despite stealing and harassment. 20. A person blamed their parents for their life choices at age 35. They were 35 years old. They lived with their parents. They had no job. They had no education beyond high school. They had no ambition. Their parents asked them to become independent. They blamed their parents for their situation. They said their parents didn't push them enough. Their parents said they're 35. They said their parents should have been stricter. Their parents said they're an adult now. They insisted their parents failed them. Their parents gave them an ultimatum. They had 6 months to get a job and move out. They did nothing for 6 months. Their parents kicked them out. They moved into a friend's apartment. They didn't pay rent. The friend kicked them out. They were homeless. They blamed their parents. They said their parents made them homeless. Their parents said they gave them 6 months. They said 6 months wasn't enough. Their parents said they had 17 years. They insisted their childhood set them up to fail. Their parents offered to help if they got a job. They refused. They said their parents owed them unconditional support. Their parents said, not at 35. They lived on the street. They blamed their parents for everything. They posted on social media. They said their parents abandoned them. Their parents responded. Their parents listed everything they'd done to help. The parents' response showed decades of support. People sided with the parents. They blocked everyone. The stupidity was blaming your parents for your life choices at 35, doing nothing for 6 months, refusing help, becoming homeless, and never accepting you're an adult. 21. Someone blamed the fire department for water damage after they put out the fire they started. They were cooking. They left oil on high heat. The oil caught fire, the fire spread. They called 911. The fire department arrived. They put out the fire with water. The house had water damage. They blamed the fire department. They said the fire department damaged their house. The fire chief said they saved their house. They said the water damage was excessive. The chief said that's how fires are extinguished. They demanded compensation. The chief refused. They tried to sue the fire department. The lawsuit claimed unnecessary water damage. The fire department showed fire protocols. The judge asked how else to put out fires. They said the fire department should have been more careful. The judge asked if they started the fire. They admitted they left oil unattended. The judge dismissed the case. They had to pay legal fees. The fees were $5,000. Their insurance covered fire damage, but they complained. They said the insurance didn't cover enough. Insurance said they're lucky they have coverage. They blamed the fire department in reviews. They said firefighters are reckless. Comments defended firefighters. People called them ungrateful. They doubled down. They started a campaign against the fire department. Nobody joined. They remained bitter. The stupidity was starting a fire through negligence, blaming firefighters for saving your house, suing them for water damage, paying $5,000, and campaigning against people who saved you. 22. A person blamed their accountant for their tax fraud. They hired an accountant. They told the accountant to minimize taxes. The accountant provided legal strategies. They wanted more aggressive approaches. The accountant warned against illegal deductions. They insisted on claiming them anyway. The accountant refused. They fired the accountant. They filed their own taxes. They claimed fraudulent deductions. The IRS audited them. They were caught. The IRS charged them with tax fraud. They blamed their accountant. They said the accountant gave them ideas. The IRS asked for documentation. They had none. The IRS said they filed their own taxes. They said the accountant influenced them. The IRS said the accountant refused to file fraudulent returns. They said the accountant should have stopped them. The IRS said they were an adult who made choices. They were convicted. They were fined $50,000. They were sentenced to probation. They sued the accountant. The lawsuit claimed professional negligence. The accountant showed documentation of warnings. The accountant showed they were fired for refusing fraud. The judge dismissed the case immediately. They had to pay the accountant's legal fees. The fees were $10,000. They owed $60,000 total. They blamed the accountant for that too. The stupidity was committing tax fraud after your accountant refused, getting caught, blaming the accountant who tried to stop you, suing them, and owing $60,000. 23. Someone blamed their friend for their DUI because the friend didn't stop them from driving. They were at a party. They drank heavily. They decided to drive home. Their friend said they shouldn't drive. They insisted they were fine. Their friend offered to call a cab. They refused. Their friend offered to drive them. They refused. They got in their car. They drove drunk. They were pulled over. They failed sobriety tests. They were arrested for DUI. They called their friend from jail. They blamed their friend. They said their friend should have stopped them. Their friend said they tried. They said their friend should have tried harder. Their friend said they're not responsible for their choices. They insisted their friend enabled them. Their friend said they refused all help. They said their friend should have taken their keys. Their friend said they're not their parent. They went to court. They were convicted. They lost their license. They were fined $10,000. They blamed their friend. They told everyone their friend let them drive drunk. Mutual friends heard both sides. Mutual friends sided with the friend. They lost friends over it. They had to take the bus to work. They blamed their friend for transportation problems. Their friend stopped talking to them. They blamed their friend for the lost friendship. The stupidity was driving drunk after refusing all help, blaming your friend, losing your license, paying $10,000, and destroying friendships. 24. A person blamed the airline for missing their flight when they arrived 5 minutes before departure. They had a flight at 3 p.m. They arrived at the airport at 2:55 p.m. They ran to the gate. The gate was closed. They banged on the door. Staff said the flight was closed. They insisted on boarding. Staff said boarding ends 15 minutes before departure. They said they made it. Staff said barely. They demanded to be let on. Staff said the plane was taxiing. They blamed the airline. They demanded compensation. The airline said they should arrive earlier. They said 2 hours early is excessive. The airline said it's the recommendation. They said it's just a suggestion. The airline said suggestions prevent this. They left bad reviews. They said the airline wouldn't let them board. Reviews mentioned arriving 5 minutes before. Comments sided with the airline. People said 2 hours is standard. They argued airlines should be more flexible. People said planes have schedules. They filed complaints. The airline reviewed their case. The airline said they take no responsibility. They tried to charge back their ticket. The credit card sided with the airline. They lost the chargeback. They had to buy a new ticket. The new ticket cost more. They blamed the airline for the extra cost. They arrived early for the new flight. They complained it was inconvenient. The stupidity was arriving 5 minutes before departure, blaming the airline, fighting over obvious rules, and complaining that arriving early is inconvenient. 25. Someone blamed Facebook for their divorce after posting private marriage details publicly. They had marriage problems. They posted about them on Facebook. They shared private arguments. They complained about their spouse. Their spouse was humiliated. Their spouse asked them to stop. They refused. They said they needed to vent. Their spouse said private matters should stay private. They posted more details. Their spouse filed for divorce. They blamed Facebook. They said Facebook ruined their marriage. Their spouse said the posts ruined it. They insisted Facebook made it easy. Their spouse said nobody forced them to post. They said social media is addictive. Their spouse said they're responsible for posts. They argued Facebook should have warned them. Their spouse said common sense should warn them. The divorce proceeded. They posted about the divorce proceedings. They violated confidentiality orders. They were sanctioned by the court. They blamed Facebook for the sanctions. The judge said they chose to post. They lost custody partially due to posts. They blamed Facebook for lost custody. They tried to sue Facebook. No lawyer would take the case. They represented themselves. The case was dismissed immediately. They had to pay Facebook's legal fees. The fees were $15,000. They posted about that. The judge held them in contempt. The stupidity was posting private marriage details on Facebook, refusing to stop, blaming Facebook for your divorce, getting sanctioned, losing custody, suing Facebook, and paying $15,000. 26. A person blamed the DMV for failing their driving test 5 times when they can't parallel park. They took their driving test, they failed parallel parking, they failed the test. They blamed the DMV, they said the test was too hard. The examiner said parallel parking is required. They said it's an outdated skill. The examiner said it's part of driving. They took the test again. They failed again. They blamed the DMV for having strict standards. They took the test a 3rd time. They failed again. They blamed the test location for having difficult spots. They took the test a 4th time. They failed again. They blamed the examiner for being biased. They took the test a 5th time. They failed again. They blamed the DMV for setting them up to fail. Friends suggested taking driving lessons. They refused. They said they know how to drive. Friends said clearly not. They insisted parallel parking isn't real driving. Friends said it's a basic skill. They complained to the DMV supervisor. The supervisor reviewed their tests. The supervisor said they legitimately can't parallel park. They demanded special accommodation. The supervisor said none exists for this. They tried to sue. The lawsuit claimed discriminatory testing. The judge asked if they can parallel park. They admitted they can't. The judge dismissed the case. They paid legal fees. They still don't have a license. They blame the DMV. The stupidity was failing driving tests 5 times, refusing lessons, blaming the DMV, suing them, and never learning to parallel park. 27. Someone blamed their landlord for their eviction after not paying rent for 6 months. They stopped paying rent. They ignored rent notices for 6 months. They spent rent money on other things. The landlord filed for eviction. They blamed the landlord. They said the landlord was greedy. The landlord said they needed rent to pay the mortgage. They said that's not their problem. The landlord said it's literally the rental agreement. They said rent is too high. The landlord said they agreed to the rent. They said they changed their mind. The landlord said contracts are binding. The eviction hearing happened. The judge asked if they paid rent. They said no. The judge asked why not. They said they didn't feel like it. The judge ruled for the landlord. They were evicted. They blamed the landlord for homelessness. They posted online about evil landlords. They said landlords should provide free housing. Comments said landlords have expenses. They argued housing is a human right. Comments said rights don't mean landlords work for free. They found new housing. They did the same thing there. They were evicted again. They blamed that landlord too. They've been evicted 5 times. They blame every landlord. The stupidity was not paying rent for 6 months, blaming your landlord for eviction, expecting free housing, and being evicted 5 times without learning. 28. A person blamed their spouse for their affair because the spouse worked too much. They had an affair. Their spouse found out. Their spouse was devastated. They blamed their spouse. They said their spouse worked too much. Their spouse said that doesn't justify cheating. They insisted they were neglected. Their spouse said communication exists. They said their spouse should have known. Their spouse said they should have spoken up. They argued the affair was their spouse's fault. Their spouse filed for divorce. They blamed their spouse for the divorce. They said their spouse was giving up. Their spouse said they cheated. They insisted their spouse drove them to it. Marriage counselors took the spouse's side. They blamed the counselors for bias. The divorce proceeded. They got less in the settlement. They blamed their spouse for being unfair. Their spouse remarried. They stalked social media. They blamed their spouse for moving on. Friends sided with the spouse. They lost mutual friends. They blamed their spouse for turning friends against them. They remained bitter. They told dates about their evil ex. Dates stopped calling. They blamed their spouse for their dating problems. The stupidity was having an affair, blaming your spouse for your cheating, blaming them for divorce, stalking them, and blaming them for your failed dating life. 29. Someone blamed Best Buy for their computer virus after downloading from sketchy websites. They bought a computer. They immediately downloaded free software from questionable sites. They clicked on pop-ups. They disabled antivirus. Their computer got infected with viruses. The computer crashed. They took it to Best Buy. They said Best Buy sold them a defective computer. Best Buy's tech checked it. The tech found hundreds of viruses. The tech explained they downloaded malware. They blamed Best Buy for selling an insecure computer. The tech said they disabled security features. They insisted Best Buy should have prevented that. The tech said users control their computers. They demanded a refund. Best Buy refused. They left terrible reviews. They said Best Buy sells virus-infected computers. Reviews mentioned downloading from sketchy sites. Comments mocked them. People explained basic computer security. They argued computers should be foolproof. People said users need to make smart choices. They tried to sue Best Buy. The lawsuit claimed defective product. Best Buy showed diagnostic logs. The logs showed intentional security disabling. The judge dismissed the case. They paid legal fees. They bought another computer. They did the same things. That computer got infected too. They blamed Best Buy again. The stupidity was disabling antivirus and downloading malware, blaming Best Buy, suing them, paying legal fees, and repeating the exact same behavior. 30. A person blamed their doctor for their continued illness after refusing to take prescribed medication. They were sick. The doctor prescribed medication. They didn't take it. They didn't believe in medication. Weeks passed. They didn't improve. They blamed the doctor. They said the doctor's treatment didn't work. The doctor asked if they took the medication. They said no. The doctor asked why not. They said they don't trust pharmaceuticals. The doctor said then the treatment can't work. They insisted the doctor should have prescribed something else. The doctor said medication is necessary. They demanded alternative treatments. The doctor provided diet and exercise recommendations. They didn't follow those either. They got worse. They blamed the doctor again. They left bad reviews. They said the doctor is incompetent. Reviews mentioned refusing medication. Comments sided with the doctor. People said you have to take medicine for it to work. They argued natural healing should work. People said they're still sick, so it doesn't. They found a new doctor. They refused that doctor's medication too. They got worse still. They blamed both doctors. They needed hospitalization. They blamed all their doctors. Hospital doctors prescribed medication. They refused it in the hospital. They blamed the hospital for slow recovery. The stupidity was refusing all medication, blaming doctors for not improving, leaving bad reviews, and expecting to get better without treatment. 31. Someone blamed their personal trainer for not losing weight while eating fast food daily. They hired a personal trainer. They trained 3 times weekly. The trainer provided a meal plan. They ignored the meal plan. They ate fast food for every meal. Weeks passed. They didn't lose weight. They blamed the trainer. They said the training wasn't working. The trainer asked about their diet. They admitted eating fast food daily. The trainer said diet is crucial. They insisted exercise should be enough. The trainer explained weight loss is 80% diet. They demanded better workouts. The trainer said workouts can't overcome bad diet. They accused the trainer of being lazy. The trainer showed their progress tracking. The tracking showed no dietary compliance. They said tracking is judgmental. They fired the trainer. They left a bad review. They said the trainer didn't help them. The review mentioned eating fast food daily. Comments sided with the trainer. People said you can't out-exercise a bad diet. They argued trainers should make it work somehow. People said that's not how biology works. They hired a new trainer. They did the same thing. They didn't lose weight. They blamed that trainer too. They've gone through 6 trainers. They blame all of them. The stupidity was eating fast food daily while expecting to lose weight, blaming your trainer, going through 6 trainers, and never changing your diet. 32. A person blamed their therapist for their mental health not improving when they lied in every session. They went to therapy. The therapist asked questions. They lied about everything. They said they were doing homework. They weren't. They said they were practicing techniques. They weren't. Months passed. They didn't improve. They blamed the therapist. They said therapy wasn't working. The therapist asked for honest feedback. They lied again. The therapist couldn't help based on false information. They got worse. They blamed the therapist more. They left therapy. They told friends the therapist was useless. Friends asked what they lied about. They admitted lying about everything. Friends said that's why it didn't work. They insisted the therapist should have known. Friends said therapists need honesty. They argued good therapists can tell. Friends said mind reading isn't real. They tried a new therapist. They lied to that one too. Therapy didn't work again. They blame that therapist. They've seen 8 therapists. They've lied to all of them. They blame all of them for not helping. They tell people therapy is a scam. People suggest being honest. They refuse. The stupidity was lying to your therapist, expecting therapy to work anyway, blaming therapists for not mind reading, and going through 8 therapists without honesty. 33. Someone blamed the police for their arrest after live streaming themselves committing crimes. They committed burglary. They live streamed it on social media. Thousands watched. Many people called the police. The police arrived. They were caught in the act. They were arrested. They blamed the police. They said the police violated their privacy. The police said they were live streaming publicly. They insisted police shouldn't have watched. The police said viewers called it in. They blamed viewers for snitching. Their lawyer said they filmed themselves committing crimes. They said they didn't think police watched social media. Their lawyer said everyone watches social media. They asked if the evidence could be suppressed. Their lawyer said they voluntarily published it. They went to trial. The prosecution showed the live stream. The jury found them guilty immediately. They blamed the police for prosecuting them. The judge sentenced them to prison. They blamed the police for the sentence. They appealed. The appeal cited privacy violations. The appeals court laughed. The appeal was denied. They served their sentence. They got out and blamed the police for their criminal record. They couldn't get a job. They blamed the police for that too. They posted about police harassment. People showed them their own live stream. They blamed people for bringing it up. The stupidity was live streaming yourself committing crimes, blaming police for watching your public stream, expecting privacy for public content, and blaming police for your own documented crimes. 34. A person blamed their wedding planner for their divorce. They hired a wedding planner. The planner organized a beautiful wedding. The wedding went perfectly. They got married. 6 months later, they got divorced. They blamed the wedding planner. They said the planner didn't warn them about marriage. The planner said that's not their job. They insisted planners should assess compatibility. The planner said they plan events, not relationships. They demanded a refund. The planner refused. They left terrible reviews. They said the planner ruined their life. Reviews mentioned divorcing 6 months later. Comments were confused. People said wedding planners plan weddings. They argued planners should do more. People said that's not their role. They tried to sue for emotional distress. The lawsuit claimed negligent planning. The judge read the complaint. The judge asked what the wedding planner did wrong. They said the planner didn't stop the wedding. The judge asked if they wanted to get married. They said yes at the time. The judge dismissed the case immediately. They paid legal fees. They blamed the planner for legal fees. They got remarried to someone else. They divorced again. They blamed that wedding planner too. The stupidity was blaming your wedding planner for your divorce, expecting them to assess your relationship, suing them, and divorcing twice while blaming the planners. 35. Someone blamed Amazon for their credit card debt after buying things they couldn't afford. They had Amazon Prime. They bought items daily. They bought things they didn't need. They maxed out their credit card. They accumulated $30,000 in debt. They blamed Amazon. They said Amazon made it too easy. They closed their Amazon account. They demanded Amazon forgive their debt. Amazon said they purchased items voluntarily. They insisted one-click ordering is predatory. Amazon said they can remove one-click. They said Amazon should have stopped them. Amazon said spending limits are their responsibility. They told everyone Amazon ruined their finances. Friends asked why they kept buying. They said Amazon's algorithm showed them products. Friends said they chose to buy them. They argued Amazon manipulated them. Friends said adults control their spending. They filed for bankruptcy. They blamed Amazon in bankruptcy filings. The trustee asked why. They explained Amazon's one-click feature. The trustee said that's not Amazon's fault. The bankruptcy discharged their debt. They started using Amazon again. They accumulated debt again. They blamed Amazon again. The stupidity was spending $30,000 on Amazon you didn't have, blaming Amazon for one-click ordering, expecting Amazon to control your spending, filing bankruptcy, and then doing it again. 36. A person blamed their coffee shop for their caffeine addiction. They drank 5 coffees daily. They'd done this for years. They became dependent on caffeine. They got headaches without it. They spent $30 daily on coffee. They spent $10,000 annually. They blamed the coffee shop. They said the shop got them addicted. The barista said they choose to come. They insisted coffee shops create addiction. The barista said caffeine is known to be addictive. They said shops should warn people. The barista pointed to the caffeine content posted. They said it should be more prominent. The barista said it's their responsibility. They tried to sue. The lawsuit claimed negligent addiction creation. The coffee shop showed their voluntary daily visits. The judge dismissed the case. They paid legal fees. They still drank 5 coffees daily. They blamed the shop for not banning them. The shop said they're a business. They said profit over people. The shop said personal responsibility exists. They tried boycotting. They lasted 2 days. They came back. They blamed the shop for being too convenient. The stupidity was drinking 5 coffees daily for years, blaming the coffee shop for your addiction, suing them, paying legal fees, and continuing to drink 5 coffees daily. 37. Someone blamed their bank for their overdraft fees after spending money they didn't have. They had $100 in their account. They spent $500. They overdrafted. The bank charged overdraft fees. They accumulated $300 in fees. They blamed the bank. They said banks shouldn't allow overdrafts. The bank said they opted into overdraft protection. They didn't remember opting in. The bank showed the signed document. They insisted the bank tricked them. The bank said they signed it willingly. They demanded fee refunds. The bank refused. They closed their account. They opened an account at another bank. They overdrafted there too. They accumulated more fees. They blamed that bank. They've overdrafted at 5 banks. They blame all of them. They tell people banks are predatory. People suggest spending within their means. They argue banks should block transactions. People say they opted into overdraft protection. They insist banks pressured them. People say they need to track spending. They refuse. They blame banks for capitalism. The stupidity was repeatedly overdrafting, blaming banks for your spending, closing 5 accounts, and never learning to track your balance. 38. A person blamed their phone for their car accident while texting and driving. They were driving. They were texting. They weren't watching the road. They rear-ended someone. Both cars were damaged. Police arrived. They blamed their phone. They said phones are too distracting. The officer said they chose to text. They insisted phones shouldn't work while driving. The officer said they're responsible for not texting. They demanded phone manufacturers be held liable. The officer cited them for distracted driving. They fought the ticket. They argued phones are the problem. The judge said they held the phone. They said phones should detect driving. The judge said they should have put it down. They lost the case. They paid the ticket. They paid insurance increases. Their rates tripled. They blamed their phone manufacturer. They sued Apple. The lawsuit claimed negligent design. Apple showed distracted driving laws. The judge dismissed the case. They paid legal fees. They continued texting while driving. They had another accident. They blamed their phone again. The stupidity was texting and driving, causing an accident, blaming your phone, suing Apple, paying thousands, and texting while driving again. 39. Someone blamed their neighbor for their grass being too long after not mowing for 3 months. They didn't mow their lawn. 3 months passed, their grass was knee-high. The HOA sent notices. They ignored them. The HOA fined them. They blamed their neighbor. They said their neighbor's perfect lawn made theirs look worse. The neighbor said that's not their problem. They insisted the neighbor was showing off. The neighbor said they just maintained their lawn. They demanded the neighbor stop mowing. The neighbor refused. They complained to the HOA. They said the neighbor created unfair standards. The HOA said they need to mow. They insisted the HOA was biased. The HOA fined them again. Fines totaled $1,000. They blamed their neighbor for the fines. The HOA placed a lien on their house. They blamed their neighbor for the lien. They finally mowed. They demanded their neighbor pay half. Their neighbor said no. They haven't spoken in years. They still blame their neighbor. The stupidity was not mowing for 3 months, blaming your neighbor for having a nice lawn, getting $1,000 in fines, getting a lien, and demanding your neighbor pay. 40. A person blamed video games for their failed education. They played video games constantly. They played 12 hours daily. They never studied. They never attended classes. They failed out of college. They blamed video games. They said games are too addictive. Their parents said they chose to play. They insisted game designers made them addictive. Their parents said they're responsible. They tried to sue game companies. The lawsuit claimed addictive design. The companies showed their playing was voluntary. The judge dismissed the case. They paid legal fees. They continued playing games. They couldn't get a job. They blamed video games for that. Their parents kicked them out. They blamed video games for being homeless. They lived with friends. They played games all day there. Friends kicked them out. They blamed video games. They've been homeless multiple times. They still play games constantly. They blame the gaming industry. The stupidity was playing games 12 hours daily, failing college, blaming video games, suing game companies, continuing to play constantly, and blaming games for homelessness. 41. Someone blamed their mirror for their appearance. They never exercised. They ate poorly. They didn't groom themselves. They looked in the mirror. They didn't like what they saw. They blamed the mirror. They said the mirror was unflattering. Their spouse said mirrors reflect reality. They insisted this mirror made them look bad. Their spouse said all mirrors show the same thing. They bought a new mirror. They looked the same. They blamed that mirror. They bought 10 different mirrors. They looked the same in all of them. They blamed the mirror industry. They covered all mirrors. They avoided reflections. Their appearance got worse. They blamed mirrors for making them self-conscious. They told friends mirrors are evil. Friends suggested working on themselves. They insisted mirrors should be more forgiving. Friends said that's not how mirrors work. They campaigned against mirrors. Nobody joined. They remain unkempt. They blame mirrors for everything. The stupidity was blaming mirrors for your appearance, buying 10 mirrors expecting different results, covering all mirrors, and campaigning against mirrors. 42. A person blamed their scale for their weight gain. They gained 60 pounds, they weighed themselves, the scale showed the gain. They blamed the scale. They said the scale was wrong. They bought a new scale, it showed the same weight. They blamed that scale. They bought 5 different scales. All showed the same weight. They insisted all scales are broken. Their doctor weighed them. The doctor's scale matched. They blamed the doctor's scale. They said medical equipment is rigged. The doctor said they gained weight. They insisted it's the scale's fault. The doctor explained scales measure reality. They refused to believe it. They threw away all scales. They continued gaining weight. They blamed scales for making them self-conscious. They gained 40 more pounds. They weighed 300 pounds. They insisted if they don't see it, it didn't happen. Their health deteriorated. They blamed scales for their health problems. The stupidity was blaming scales for showing your weight, buying 5 scales, blaming all measurement devices, and gaining 100 pounds while blaming scales. 43. Someone blamed their teacher for their plagiarism after getting caught copying Wikipedia. They had a paper due. They copied entire sections from Wikipedia. They didn't cite anything, they submitted it. The teacher ran it through plagiarism detection. It was 90% copied. The teacher gave them a 0. They blamed the teacher. They said the teacher didn't teach proper citation. The teacher said citing sources is basic. They insisted Wikipedia is public domain. The teacher said that doesn't mean you can plagiarize. They argued everyone uses Wikipedia. The teacher said everyone cites Wikipedia. They said the teacher should have reminded them. The teacher said it's college. They complained to the dean. The dean reviewed the case. The dean said the plagiarism was obvious. They blamed the teacher for being strict. The dean upheld the 0. They failed the class. They blamed the teacher for failing them. They had to retake the class. They plagiarized again. They were expelled. They blamed both teachers. The stupidity was plagiarizing Wikipedia, blaming your teacher, expecting to not cite sources, plagiarizing again, and getting expelled. 44. A person blamed their spouse for their own affair, emotional aftermath. They had an affair. They confessed. Their spouse was devastated. Their spouse cried constantly. They blamed their spouse for crying too much. They said their spouse was making it about them. Their spouse said it is about them. They insisted their spouse should move on. Their spouse said it just happened. They complained their spouse wouldn't forgive them. Their spouse said trust takes time. They said their spouse was punishing them. Their spouse said they're hurt. They demanded their spouse get over it. Their spouse filed for divorce. They blamed their spouse for giving up. They said their spouse didn't try. Their spouse said they cheated. They insisted their spouse's reaction destroyed the marriage. Their spouse said the affair destroyed it. They told everyone their spouse couldn't forgive. Friends sided with the spouse. They lost friends. They blamed their spouse for turning friends against them. The divorce finalized. They blamed their spouse for their loneliness. The stupidity was having an affair, blaming your spouse for being hurt, demanding instant forgiveness, blaming them for divorce, and blaming them for the consequences of your affair. 45. And finally, someone blamed society for all their problems while refusing to change anything about themselves. They were unemployed. They lived with their parents at 40. They had no education. They had no skills. They had no ambition. They blamed society. They said society failed them. Their parents said they need to try. They said trying is pointless. Their parents suggested education. They said education is a scam. Their parents suggested entry-level jobs. They said those jobs are beneath them. Their parents suggested volunteering to gain experience. They said volunteering is exploitation. Their parents suggested therapy. They said therapy is for weak people. Their parents gave them an ultimatum. They needed to contribute or leave. They did nothing. Their parents kicked them out. They blamed society for their homelessness. They lived on the streets. They blamed society for not providing housing. They refused shelter help. They said shelters have rules. They refused job programs. They said programs don't guarantee jobs. They refused all assistance. They said the system is rigged, they panhandled. They made enough for food, they blamed society for having to panhandle. People offered them jobs, they refused. They said jobs are wage slavery. People stopped offering, they blamed society for giving up on them. Years passed, they remained homeless. They blamed society for everything. They refused every opportunity. They wrote manifestos about societal failure. Nobody read them. They blamed society for not listening. They developed health problems. They refused medical care. They blamed society for their health. They remained homeless for decades. Every problem was society's fault. They never looked inward. They never tried. They never changed. They died homeless. Their final words blamed society. Friends from childhood said they'd refused every chance. Family said they'd offered endless support. Social workers said they'd rejected every program. Employers said they'd offered jobs. Nobody could help someone who refused help. The obituary blamed society. Comments said they blamed everyone but themselves. The stupidity was blaming society for everything, refusing all help, rejecting every opportunity, accepting no responsibility, staying homeless for decades, and dying while still blaming everyone else for problems they created by refusing to try. These blame-shifting disasters prove that taking responsibility is apparently too difficult for some people. Blaming others is easier than self-improvement, and some people will die on the hill of never admitting fault. Every single one of these situations could have been avoided with a simple admission of personal responsibility. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed these blame-shifting fails, and remember, if everyone else is always the problem, you're probably the problem. These people never learned that lesson.